The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. Loving baseball when we were 12 and innocent. And we're not 12 anymore. We're not innocent anymore. But
no, we're not.
We're not. I talk to the most interesting people on this topic, baseball fans who are fanatic. And I'm wondering, Bernie Rose, what year were you 12 years old?
It was a great
and welcome and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
All right. It was a great year to be 12. What year was it?
1963. Oh,
wow. Dodgers.
Now you know why.
Now I know why. You used to be a Dodger fan. Ha, ha, ha. As if you could ever change to be... I know you're a Met fan, like I'm a Met fan. But if you ask me, I'm still a New York Giant fan, let alone... So it's going to be hard for you to make a change. And I suggested earlier today that you wait until these playoffs go to see where your heart takes you. And,
absolutely.
As someone who has gone from the Mets to the Giants, to the Giants to the Mets to the Giants, depending on the year and the situation, I know that there's no right or wrong to it, and you just got to go where it takes you. How about that?
Absolutely. But
good.
You know where I am with the Dodgers. I mean, it's just been too many years to have them fall by the wayside. But we joke around a lot. And the Mets, of course, coming into being when they did, and we living so close to Shea Stadium, certainly became the team of choice to go see without question.
Absolutely. In '63, they had long since left the Polo Grounds. Not really that long.
No, '64 is when Shea opened. But
right.
I was, and you know what I was referring to, the World Series, of course.
Of course.
And being 12, and we were such, ravenous or rabid baseball fans. All the kids in the park. I mean, I'm sure, you and Mert and all you guys, when you were 12, or even later when I was 12 and you were 16, we were still huge fans. And so the Dodgers being out of town already for, 7 years or so, and the Mets were only a 2-year-old organization, there were so many Yankee fans, and they were in the World Series every year back then. And
Bernie, let's talk for a second how difficult it was for you to follow the Dodgers in L.A. From New York.
Very difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
Kids growing up today could not comprehend what we had.
Oh, what we have in availability to games is almost decadent. Today is an example. Get to see the Mets twice on television. Get to see the Yankees. The Giants are blocked off on television on MLB for me because I'm out in California, and but I get to hear them on the radio. Every game from both sides, you can hear. Like if they're playing the Yankees, you get to hear the Yankees side, the announcers, and you get to hear the Dodgers side as an example.
Oh, yeah.
So we got it pretty good now. It's a far cry from having Les Kiter recreate baseball games.
Right.
And that's all we got, or Saturday games. And, well, we were fortunate because we had the Yankees. Even though the Giants and Dodgers left, we had the Yankees. And we weren't rooting for them necessarily, but we were idolizing them. The years that you talk about being 12, they were freaking great. There's no question about it. And
you couldn't have been bigger than Mickey Mantle was in that town. I mean, it was incredible.
And it's always been the Mickey Mantle or Duke. Did you get into that as a kid?
It was to some degree, because I was being 4 years younger, and I was only, in 1958, the Dodgers and Giants' first year in the West Coast, I was only 7. So that summer. So, the Duke, Mickey and Willie thing kind of missed me to some degree. Although I lived it and I know it because I was still a Dodgers fan. I was kind of a Yankees fan before the Mets were around because I watched them in the World Series every year, even though the Dodgers were always my first team because I didn't know enough to be mad at them when they left town.
Right.
Like everybody else was.
I vacillated when they left town, my Giants. I was mad at them, but Willie was still playing in his prime, his second prime out in California. And who knew 3 or 4 years later, the Air Force would station me halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento. And I got to see the bulk of Willie's second prime. So it worked out well. I will say this about the Mets. As great as it is being a Met fan and following them and all that, there was nothing that compared to the rivalry the Giants and Dodgers had back in those days. And if you remember, and you do, in 62 and 63 both, their main rivals for the pennant, the Giants beat them out in 62 and vice versa in 63 when Sandy Koufax was in his absolute prime. And I want you to talk about him not only as a Dodger fan, but as a Jew. People avoid doing that a lot. He was, as a fellow Jew, he was, no matter who you rooted for, whatever team you rooted for, you took pride in this guy's absolute dominance and his guts to not pitch on a high holy day. Whatever you believe, I think a high holy day is when I can get high in the morning and not disturb the neighbors. But if one is religious, and a certain amount of the cultural thing rubs off on any Jew, religious or not.
Well, which we are not, but I don't know whether we want to put that out there or not.
No. Well,
but we are both the heritage, and we are what we are. I mean, we are Jewish. And,
I know. We're hated by enough people. We don't have to announce this.
Exactly.
But I'd like to let people know, just in case. Some people don't know why they hate me. They don't know I'm Jewish, but there's something about him.
But you are right. It did mean something, and it's strange because even as a kid, I'm 12, but for some reason there was a pride there, and you knew it even at that young age. And I was just made a Dodgers fan. You know, they put me in a Dodgers uniform when I was 3. You just saw the picture not a couple of days ago.
You and Mert, it was. I guess your dad really went out of his way because he got 2 kids' uniforms, both flannel, and for 2 different sized kids. Did he bring you to baseball originally, or was your uncle involved in that?
Dad. It was our father, yeah. Okay. One thing I can tell you is I know I went to Ebbets Field with my father and probably Mert. Who knows? Maybe my mother even went, but I was too young. I really don't remember it. I just know that I was there. What I remember is after they left town in those late 50s and early 60s, going to Yankee Stadium with my father, and I remember walking out and just seeing that field. It was just incredible.
I don't think you had been to the Polo Grounds, had you?
Well, I saw the Mets play there those first couple of years.
Okay, that was even more immense acreage than Yankee Stadium, if you can imagine that. And the Yankees had something that other teams didn't have. I don't think anybody put monuments in play on the field. And
right. And they were out there.
Yeah, and they were, and we got to go on the field after the game and exit through the back, and walk on that grass. They roped off the infield, and kids would get by the guards and slide into second base and what have you. I have vague memories of that, but seeing those monuments up close was a kick. There was something about Yankee Stadium that was like a cathedral. Talking about high holy days, you go to a Yankee game and you hear Bob Shepard go, "Now batting for the Yankees, number 7, Mickey Mantle." Number 7. His voice resonated, and if you were lucky enough to go to a doubleheader, you were disappointed when in the second game they announced the lineups and Norm Seaborn was playing center field because Mickey didn't play many doubleheaders in those days. Do you remember your first game?
Not really. Not really. Okay. That's a shame, isn't it? I just remember the aura of the field, and I remember at the end of the games in Yankee Stadium that they let you walk out onto the field. They opened up the gates, and you walked along the track on that hooks up to the warning track in the outfield, and you exited out through the outfield. Do you remember that?
I do. As a matter of fact, I remember it before they limited the fans to the track, and you could literally go on the field and walk.
Wow.
Like I said.
Yeah. That was so cool.
And people that aren't from New York don't realize that part of the coolness is you don't get to see grass growing up in New York very often. And that was a thrill, whatever park you were in.
You had to go to Central Park, Prospect Park, and later on Flushing Meadows Park. I mean, you had to go to a park.
Well, a casino park, I think.
Yeah, casino park.
That was... they even had woods in Casino Park. I was thinking about that the other day. A kid could get lost in the woods and feel scared.
Amazing.
In New York City, it was Queens, but it was a borough in New York. One thing about New York, when you say Central Park, they were far-sighted in keeping that a park and not building, because the whole spirit of New York, now that the Giants and Dodgers are gone, is built around Central Park. Everybody has to see Central Park, and should see Central Park.
Absolutely.
If
it's still great.
Visiting, it's still great, absolutely. And there's enough crime in there to keep your head up. Yeah, to this day, you're walking around like with a swivel neck to see who's coming at you. But it is what it is, and there's something about it that you become excited just from the spirit of the city, or the speed of the city. It's open all night, and restaurants, and where we grew up in Queens, going back there occasionally is is a big thrill. Tell me about your disappointment or disappointments, and how baseball has changed since those days.
Wow, that's interesting. I've gotten so into baseball again in a way. I mean, there was a time where I didn't watch so much. When I got into my 20s, I guess there was a time where I was just more into other things, and the Dodgers a few years after Koufax retired didn't have so many great years, so I wasn't watching, but I like a lot of the things that they're doing. So to talk about disappointments, that's an interesting concept. Well, where would you start? Give me some ideas.
I would start with a runner on second base.
Don't like it.
No apparent reason.
Don't like it.
Don't like that. But I will equalize it, and we'll talk about some of the things that I'm thrilled with, and that's the athleticism of today's athlete, today's baseball player. Unbelievable. The flexibility to play different positions, and the speed. It's become an upgraded game skill-wise. Strategy-wise, I don't like it's a strikeout or a home run. You don't hear the magic words, get them on, get them over anymore.
Right. I don't. As far as the new rules because of COVID and everything, that's really a shame. Really, the runner at second base, But I get it, and time constraints, and things like that. The ball players from the old days. And if you want to go way back, some guys were overweight, and they weren't working out. The game has changed in so many ways. I think mostly for the better. Mm-hmm. I like the extra. I'm interested to see how it all works out with the two buys and the extra wild card team. I was always a traditionalist. I didn't want the DH, but now it's been over 40 years, 50 years, 50 years since the DH. It was 1972, right? So, and the National League finally got it. In the last few years, I was ready for it. So I think actually it might as well be a good thing, and it is. But I didn't think so for many, many years. But after the last bunch of years of seeing too many guys left on base, and I just figured, why not?
Right. Well, I will throw in that there was when I was a kid, probably like you say, 4 or 5 years before you coming up, there were really an abundance of good hitting pitchers. Not an abundance, but there'd be one or two guys on every team. Bob Turley was a good hitting pitcher. Don Newcomb was a good hitting pitcher. And there was an expression, help yourself, kid. Like the pitch is up. The pitch is up. At bat, he has a potential of affecting the game. I remember the really lousy hitting pitchers like Bob Buell, who would be 1 for 27 or something like that, with Don Zimmer like New York Met numbers. But it did add a little excitement to it. I miss a good bunter.
I was just going to say, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. Nobody can bunt in baseball anymore, and I just don't get it. And that gets into the whole DH thing. I think maybe that's why I was ready for it, because nobody would bunt. And when they call for a bunt, most of the time they can't bunt. And so now that there's a DH, you're almost never going to see a bunt. Maybe because of the guy on second now in the extra innings, you do see it. If they can get it down.
And you get guys that they're giving you the whole side of the infield.
What do you think? You like that, the shift?
No, I don't particularly. But I think if the shift, for shift's sake, really hurts defense, because a third baseman playing right field, who is forced to turn a double play because of the odd angles that the ball is hit, takes away from the skill level of a great double play. Remember these wonderful, and speaking of the Mets, Lindor and Guillermo are doing it as if they played together for 15 years.
Yeah,
But that gets back to the skill level and players being able to adjust. And I have to say, I like that. I like the idea that a guy can come in and surprise with a great play at any position. J.D. Davis, the third best fielding Met first baseman today, makes a play that was unbelievable. A split save. It was like Gump Worsley, split save.
And a beauty.
And a beauty, right, exactly.
Because I look at some of these guys, when they come up with the shift, and I'm saying, just lay a bunt like a guy like Bellinger, and he won't do it. Now, every now and then, he can hit it the other way. Not like Freddie Freeman or some other guys, but he can't. But with Bellinger's speed, if they're going to give him the whole side of the left side, lay a bunt down, get to first base, and steal second base, because, I think most of the time he runs, they don't throw him out. I mean, why not take advantage of that, especially when you struggle the way he has since he won that MVP?
Yeah, and I can hear in your voice that you really don't care about the Dodgers anymore.
Right.
I could be mistaken. I've been wrong before.
You have. Not really. Let's just, for a moment, if you might, just because I brought it up in the beginning of how special a year it was when I was 12, I'd like to relate two stories to you.
Please.
And they have to do both in a way with the Yankees. One in a way Yankee fans won't like, and one in a way they might. And I got a question for you. I don't know if you remember ever hearing this record in our house that Mert and I had. I guess
Roly Poly.
We we had a record called Little Johnny Strikeout, and it was narrated by Joe DiMaggio.
Wow!
And it was an LP. It was like 2 sides or 4 sides. It was a story about a kid who was playing Little League baseball, and he can't hit, and he's striking out all the time. He's in the park, and he's crying, and who comes walking along and meets him but Joe DiMaggio, and he teaches the kid how to hit, or I don't even know if I'm remembering it right. He tells him what to do, and he ends up tearing the cover off the ball at the end of the thing.
I remember DiMaggio selling that kid an autograph.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm 12 years old that year, and we used to listen to that record. I was even younger. We had that record for a number of years. I probably wasn't listening to it anymore when I was 12. But I read his book, The Yankee Clipper, when I was 12. And at the end of the book, and even though he retired, his last year was the year I was born, 1951.
1951, right?
Right. And I read the book, and Joe DiMaggio, man, he was everything. Even though, Mantle was my favorite Yankee at the time, the whole city in 1961 was going crazy with that home run race with Roger Maris and Mickey. But Anyway, I get to the end of the book, and it says, if you want to write Joe DiMaggio and join the fan club, here it is. Anyway, I wrote Joe DiMaggio a letter, and I sent it, and never got an answer. Now that's Joe DiMaggio, huh?
That's Joe DiMaggio, and that's an expectant fan, a kid who is hoping to hear from his hero, and that tells you that it's really the responsibility. These guys are making a lot of money, and they're making a lot of money, as Campy used to say, to play a little boy's game. So it's the least they could do. The least they could do, even if they have to hire someone to forge the signature and write back, make a kid happy.
Now, it could have gotten lost in the mail. Who knows? But it's just a funny thing.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I wouldn't have gotten lost if Shelley Levinson's dad had delivered that mail.
There you go. Oh, Manny. I love Manny. He was great.
He was a great guy. And I'll tell you, speaking of dads in the neighborhood that I loved, and that was yours. Your dad was a man. I was over at your house, must have been 12 times a week. And he was always so mellow. And I got a quick story to tell you about opening day at Shea Stadium in 1964. I don't know if you've heard this before, but about 9 of the kids from the neighborhood, and it could have been 19, and I don't want to exaggerate, all sat in the upper deck in right field for that game. We all played hooky from school, and most of the kids, most of them, it was with their parents' permission. But I was such a horrible student and a horrible kid that I didn't get parents' permission. I still went. Of course. So I
knew you guys were going. I wanted to go. But
you were a little too young for that, right?
Right.
But my mother is out shopping, and your dad works swing shift, as you know, and would off time walk to the store for your mother. And they fall into step, and Jack says to my mom, Vivian, kids have a nice day for a game. So my mother goes, my mother goes, "Oh, really? Uh-huh." And she's shaking. She's so pissed that I would play hooky. I
they
come
had no
home.
vision, really. It's a shame. But they didn't have the vision. There's certain things they just didn't get. Like my parents not get. I hate to interrupt your story just for 1 second, but like the tickets to see the Beatles at Shea Stadium were like $3, $3 and $4, and I begged because I didn't have the money to just give me $4. I want to go see the Beatles. No, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, but my mom just, how was school today? And I go, oh, it wasn't too bad. And she wails off and whacks me across the face.
Yeah.
Not a close fist. She couldn't go to jail. That was who's going to take care of me. But she was very angry, wouldn't sign the note. I had to have Elaine Crone forge my father's signature so I could get back into Newtown. Like, that was a thrill for me.
Yeah, right.
Going back into Newtown. I was talking to someone about New York City high schools the other day, and he graduated Brooklyn Tech or went to Brooklyn Tech, and I reminded him that there were 3 high schools that required a test to get into the high school.
Oh, yeah.
Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech.
Brooklyn Tech, right.
And Newtown didn't require a test to get out of Newtown.
I hear you.
So,
that's a story.
But
you had a great time at the game, though.
Definitely. That was a thrill, and the pain, finally, last Thursday, the pain of being smacked in the face wore off. He's been dead for 15 years. I put it all behind me, and what can I say? But
so my wife was walking by and heard what we were talking about a few minutes ago, and she looked it up online here. You could actually get Little Johnny Strikeout. Joe DiMaggio came out in 1949. It's on eBay for $100.
Wow.
$100.
And then you have to get a record player to play it because no one has a record player.
Yeah. It's a double record set. It's a 2-record set. And my other story was all the money that I won off my friends in the World Series in 1963. All my quarter bets. That was big money when you're 12 in 1963. There's a bunch of my friends. I made a couple of $3 off that World Series. But it was even better the fact that
I'll bet you remember who in the neighborhood was a Giant fan, a Yankee fan, or a Dodger fan.
Oh, we used to have great, conversations in the schoolyard, in the park, in 90th Street Park. Oh, yeah.
And at Jack and Manny's, did you hang at
oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
At the luncheonette, and the magazines would come in and the sporting news would come in, and Pop, the Jack and Manny's dad, an elderly gentleman who worked the cash register up front, he'd say, "The magazines are for buying. They're not for reading. Don't read the magazines."
Oh, those are great memories. Oh, my goodness.
I will say this. Growing up in Queens, Northridge in particular, the years that we grew up in, we were blessed. We really were. The world was so much different then, and it wasn't anywhere near perfect.
No,
but well, Jesus, what a difference between then and now. I don't want to get into talking about that stuff, and we'll save that for another podcast. when my stomach is stronger. What's
remember
happening?
the old Saturday afternoon game of the week on NBC?
Right.
And the Giant Dodger games, most of the time when they would meet on a weekend, they would put it on at 4:00 on a Saturday afternoon, you know. And if you were lucky, you got Koufax or Drysdale, you know, against maybe Marichal or I can't think offhand. But the Giants had powerhouse lineup with, you know, McCovey and Mays and Cepeda, and of course the Dodgers had the pitching, and it was just unbelievable.
It was great being a baseball fan. Bernie, this has been terrific.
Well, I loved it. It was great. Thanks for doing it.
Okay, we'll have a more serious conversation when I can, like I say, when I can stomach it, when we both can stomach it.
Yep,
because it's a world that we're grateful to have baseball as kind of a candy store to escape and not think about what's going on, at least for a while. So
yeah, I'll go with that.
All right.
I appreciate
it, my
it,
friend.
Yeah.
If anybody's listening, it's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The name of the show that we're doing is Lovin' Baseball When We Were 12 and Innocent. We're no longer that, but we certainly can remember the days when we were. And love doing it. I can't tell you. I knew you, Bernie, before you could recognize me. Before you were old enough. How old were you when you moved into Northridge?
Oh, well, our building was the first one that opened. So
I know.
And it was January of 52. I was 6 months old.
Right. And, wow.
So you met Bert when you guys were 6 or 7, then you're right. I was 2 or 3.
Right. And you didn't even know who I was. But my first memory of you is practicing. And you're a musician, always was, always will be. But that didn't come from natural talent alone. You had to put in time.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So to do anything, if we could be an example, if you could be an example, I can't be an example to anything about anybody, but your lesson to the youth of America would be consistency and practice and always do what you love.
Well, that's great advice. Great advice.
Yeah, that's advice from Bernie. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Thank you again, Bernie. Bernie Rose, Barn, we call him. Listen to Barn and his brother Mert, along with Robert Cole, on the Met Show, the Met podcast we do on the network, and which I think is the best Met podcast on the internet. And I'm very proud of producing that. We have a Yankee show too. Hey, listen, thanks again, Bern. I'm going to let you go and remind people, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, adios and happy trails.
Pleasure. Take care.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.